in Pretoria.
In other news, National Police Commissioner Khehla Sitole has sacked Deputy National Police Commissioner Bonang Mgwenya. She was arrested and appeared in court last month on charges of corruption, fraud, money laundering and theft. Sitole initially suspended her pending an internal investigation. She was then fired yesterday after being found guilty. To discuss the implications of this and the quarterly crime statistics released today, we're joined now by Dr. Johan Burger, research consultant at the Institute for Security Studies. A very good evening to you. Let's first start with the Deputy Police Commissioner being dismissed. Her dismissal, how should we view this? Is it a positive move or a damning indictment?
Well, it's both, I think, in a way. It's both because it's damning in the sense that this is not the first Lieutenant General in the police service that is being dismissed. We've had over the years a few number of dismissals in this sense, but as part, it seems now, as part of the national drive by government, the national anti-corruption drive, that the police are also cleaning up their own ranks, where before they seemed to be very protective as far as their members who face serious allegations are concerned. So in that sense, it's positive that the police are not just cleaning up their own ranks, but they are seen to be doing this. So I think this goes a long way towards restoring some confidence back into the police service. We've had a number of cases, including within the Hawks, over the last few weeks. So I think these are positive indications that the police are now finally prepared to act against those within their ranks who faces serious allegations of corruption.
But can we get a better sense of just how deep the rot goes? The police commissioner himself saying that there have been death threats that have been made against investigators, even to high-ranking officials who are signing off on these probes. Is it a systemic issue, or is it, as some people have said, a few bad apples who really stain the reputation of hard-working law enforcement officers?
Yeah, I don't buy the whole idea of bad apples. I think, bad apples seem to create the impression that it's a very small problem and you can get rid of them. In the police service currently, and not only the police service, in the broader South African society, including amongst the politicians. We know from the many cases that are before our courts, from the Zondo Commission, corruption in South Africa has become a systemic problem. And certainly the police also experience the same kind of problem. So it's a deep-rooted problem. It's good to know that there is now action against them, but you need to go far beyond this. The police need to completely re-look the way they organize themselves, recruiting into the police service. I mean, we've got the National Development Plan with a huge number of very constructive recommendations that's never been implemented. So hopefully this would be the start of a complete new look by the police themselves about how it is managed, how they appoint people to senior positions, especially key positions within the police service. So yes, it's a systemic problem.
I mean, just looking at this particular case of Bonang Mgwenya, it is regarding a tender of 190 million rand and accusing her of exposing the SABC to risk. And of course, she herself has been accused of directly benefiting from it. But the procurement processes are very clear. Why does it seemingly seem so easy for officials to overstep this, to circumvent this? Is it the lack of oversight, or is it the collusion that occurs? Because you mentioned earlier on that it seemed in the parts that the police were protecting their own.
Yes, and I think that is an important point you make in terms of the collusion. If we look at, and I'm not saying anyone is guilty, that's for the courts to decide, but the allegation seems to be serious. You look at Khomotso Plani, who was acting national commissioner, and Siliwe de Lange, who was the provincial commissioner, and senior people within supply chain. So it looks like all the key role players came together and decided they will manipulate those prescribed processes to enrich themselves and to defraud the police service of millions of rands that could have been used for police work. For vehicles, for example, the police are suffering with lack of vehicles. But in any case, so it seems like the collusion at the highest level was at the heart of this problem, which again tells you that all of these processes will have to be revisited. They will have to relook these processes so that this becomes, if not completely impossible, then at least far more difficult to do.
Let's look at the crime statistics now. The police minister, Bheki Cele, releasing them using the terms crime holiday to describe the decreasing cases. But obviously there have been some worrying ones. And I want to look at the decrease in murder, sexual assault, for instance. And I want to understand this against the backdrop of we did hear several cases of femicide, several cases of GBV that were increased as a result of a lockdown. So how do we rationalize these figures?
Yeah, it's as far as domestic violence and gender-based violence is concerned, very, very difficult. I don't think we've had enough time to really properly analyze and discuss this thing. But one thing that comes to mind, during the lockdown, especially hard lockdown, levels 5 and 4, and even 3 to some extent, I think we've had a lower than expected reporting rate for those kinds of crimes. And part of the reason that we thought at the time was the fact that the victims and the perpetrators were locked up together, in the same homes. And also at the time there were serious allegations of brutality by the police, in terms of enforcing the restriction laws. So people were afraid to go to the police. So that's changed now, and I think people are more free to go and report these crimes. But then it's it's difficult then to understand how these crimes could have a decrease unless one considers.
And let's talk about, just very quickly, Dr. Burger, before I let you go, the police minister saying that he fears that with the festive season there can be more crime. And he also lamented the role that alcohol played, especially in assault GBV cases, 829 thereof, 747 of rape cases, exactly 179 attempts of murder also accounted for, or alcohol accounted for these. The restrictions on alcohol have been, relaxed. Does that mean that we're going to see a surge in these types of crime as well?
Well, we predicted this already in June, that as the lockdown is down, we will see an increase in most types of crime, especially violent crimes. And part of the reason for this is, of course, the return to normality, freedom of movement, and also access to alcohol. And it's not that the alcohol, and the minister is absolutely correct, that the alcohol itself is bad, but the abuse of the alcohol, and it's especially around areas where alcohol is consumed, at shebeens and other, clubs and so forth. And the restriction is now to not sell after 12 o'clock in the evening, but I can tell you now many places will remain open, even unlawfully so, and sell alcohol, and that's where the fighting and stuff happens.
Dr. Johan Burger, thank you so much for your time. Research consultant at the Institute for Security Studies, and just coincidentally looking at the various crime categories and those that have gone up, and just warning to everyone during this period to be careful. Robberies at residential premises, including bank robberies, trike hijackings, those did go up, and we'll continue watching those figures during the festive season, but there may be a warning that these will go up as well. So tensions ran high at the